River run past even Adams, from swerve of shore to bend of bay, brings us by commodious vicus of recirculation back to Howth Castle and environs. Sir Tristram, Viale Demoris, for over the short sea had Pazencourt arrived from North Armorica on this side of the scraggy isthmus of Europe Minor to welder fight his peninsulate war, nor had Topsawyer's rocks by the stream Oconee exaggerated themselves to Lawrence County's Gorgias, while they went doubling their mumper all the time, nor a voice from a fire bellows mish mish to tough Thuart Patrick. Not yet, though Venice soon after had a kid scad but ended a blank old Isaac. Not yet, though all's fair in Venice, where Sozy Sethers wroth with Twone Nathan Joe. Wrote a peck of Paz malt had gem or shan brewed by Arclight, and Rory End to the Regan brow was to be seen ringsome on the aqua face. Did that make the slightest bit of sense to any of you? Well, if you're like me, you picked out bits and pieces there, and there's a lot of name dropping, and that part is followed by the words, "The Fall." And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the first 2.5 paragraphs of Finnegans Wake by James Joyce. That last little nugget, that was him writing out in alliterative form what a lightning strike sounds like. The fall of a once wall-straight old par is retailed early in bed and later on life down through all Christian minstrelsy. The great fall of the off-wall entailed at such short notice the shoot of Finnegan, erse solid man, that the Humpty Hill-head of himself promptly sends an unquarrying one well to the west in quest of his Trumpty-Tumtoes, and their upturned pipe point and place is at the knock out in the park, where oranges have been laid to rust upon the green since devil first loved Livy. That was the first page of Finnegans Wake. So, as you can tell, this book is painfully inaccessible. And this is about the extent of how much I wanted to review this book as part of James Joyce. But this book, it calls to me still. It is so bloody irresistible because, like many really, really esoteric works, I've actually read more about it than it itself. I've only ever read the first few pages of this, and that apparently is typical. People will read through individual pages trying to sort and parse the meaning of the 26 languages that Joyce worked into the text. It's primarily in English. It's got Gaelic weaved in there. James Joyce being a very, very proud Irish culturalist and revivalist. But then you have, clearly French, Spanish, Turkish, Arabic. 26 languages in total are weaved into this, making for something that is really, really incomprehensible. But the point of it was, Joyce was trying to write something that captured everything, like the essence of human history and existence and consciousness, and all weave together the sort of interesting sort of dream state thing. And another interesting thing is that the story begins where it ends, which is sort of a little commentary on the cyclical nature of time. So, for example, when we get to the very, very end, we've got people sailing out to sea and then back to land, and the metaphor being that all things sort of arise out of the sea in creation myths and so forth, and then return to the sea in the end. It's like from nothingness to something, and then something to nothingness again, round and round throughout the whole, the long, long annals of history. And so at the end, Yes, carry me along, Taddy, like you've done through the toy fair. If I seen him bearing down on me now, under white spread wings like he'd come from archangels, I think I'd die down over his feet, humbly dumbly, only to wash up. Yes, Tid, there's where. First, we pass through grass, we hush the bush to wish a gull. Gulls, far calls, coming far. End here, us then, Finn, again. Take, bus a flea, memory till thousandsy, lips the keys go given, away lone, alas, a loved along the. Pause. Then to the front. Mm-hmm. Along the river run past even Adam from Fort Swerve ashore to Bend Bay, etc. And what this first paragraph here implies is that we come once again back to the beginning, where Adam and Eve, the River Jordan, right? All these sort of biblical references, and coming back into environments familiar to Ireland, and how he's saying in a very, very interesting way that essentially all the things that we remember, whether it's references to Irish history, Sir Tristram, and or to Isaac, the ancient patriarch, all of these things have not yet happened. And then the fall of man, which he likens to sort of Humpty Dumpty there. He's worked that into the language. But yeah, and that ultimately is a major theme for the book because Finnegans Wake, as I learned, refers to an old Irish tale. Finnegan was a beloved man, a real character. He fell from a rooftop and landed below, cracked his skull, and died. And then what follows is his wake, where his family and extended family all come together. They sing, they drink, they cry, they pray, they laugh. A fight breaks out, all very typical of a wake, right? And then someone spills their whiskey on him, and he's revitalized. And it's metaphorical, the fall being that of the fall of man, and the holy water, whiskey, being symbolic of redemption. It lands on him, and he bursts back to life and says, "Do you think I am dead?" And, hello, I'm alive again. How you all doing? And they all are happy and rejoicing. So, yes, a folk tale. That's the word I was looking for. This Irish folk tale is basically allegorical to the whole Christian myth of, death, resurrection, sin, and redemption. But in this version, Finnegan, who is a hod carrier, carries mortar in a carrier for bricklayers. After he falls, he is put out at a wake as a spread so that his relations can eat him. But he disappears before that, and then after a series of little vignettes, side stories, the fight in the from the folktale breaks out. Whiskey lands on him, and Finnegan wakes up from the coffin, basically screaming for whiskey and demanding, the people feed him his holy water. And his family, on the other hand, they put him back to rest, convincing him that he was better off where he was. He's better off dead. And so that there is, that's Joyce's very symbolic and ironic take on this classic folklore. And the story then proceeds from that point. Everything else about it, everything that goes on in the story sort of follows the same basic creation epic and onto the age of the world, and it's something that is very, very, very true to Western mythology, Western cultural history and significance. There, this how we have retained all these traditions that go back to ancient Sumeria, to Greco-Roman times, and how people there viewed existence, their cosmology, really, how we all came from the stars, or we all came from nothingness, and then there was the age of the gods and the heroes and so forth, and how everything sort of went from the truly divine-like and mythological time to the present. That is a truly universal thing too, because if you look at Chinese cosmology and history, there they do it's very much the same thing. They perceive their ancient history. So anything that came before a certain dynasty for which there really were no written records. Yeah, it's like the only written records that deal with I think it was the Zhao dynasty. Anything before that, and anything certainly before the first emperor, Emperor Qin, and yeah, the first empire of China. All the written records that were written in that time, which refer to previous periods, do so in a way that is very, very, very legendary and mythological. And so they had the three sovereigns and five emperors period, I think it is. And it's like, so yeah, you have like three god kings and then five demigod kings, and they all lived ridiculous amounts of time. And yeah, this is a universal thing where the past is blessed and the present is descended from that. Things are not getting better, they're getting baser and worse. And yeah, and it is because, of course, these prehistoric times for which we have no records, no recollections, it's all faded into myth and oral accounts that later, when written down, conveyed a genuine sense of, oh, amazing what happened in these times. So yes, your main characters here too, HCE and Anna Livia Plurabelle, ALP. These two are immensely significant. And whereas HCE is the father of the story, and his initials stand for Humphrey Chimpton Earwicker, his name is rendered throughout as simply HCE, which apparently was meant to refer to, it's an acronym for Here Comes Everybody. So Humphrey is meant to represent the everyman. And his wife, Anna Livia Plurabelle, ALP, her name is reminiscent of a river in Ireland, and she represents the eternal female. So it's very symbolic that throughout the story, HCE, he has become he's become marred by indiscretions and inappropriate behavior. His wife ALP is trying to help him and redeem him, and at the end, things conclude with her going out to sea, and it's symbolic of how, yeah, in the end of all this sin and base behavior and materialistic behavior and struggle, which she feels is best characterized by men in all traditional epic tales and cultural tales, it is through woman that peace and balance is restored and things are allowed to carry on for the next great cycle, the next great generation. And there are many, many, many little side vignettes throughout the story too, which makes for a complicated reading. The time of it is all fractured. There is the whole sort of digressions between what appear to be dreamlike states and waking states. And the language itself is so very fractured with 26 different languages. So when the book came out, a lot of critics, a lot of readers, they just kind of shrugged. They said, we do not get this at all. But people who really stuck with it and who really just sort of dug into it, one critic in particular came away saying that nobody need write anything ever again. James Joyce has covered everything, right? He's got he got just about everything that made the modernist literary movement what it was. The idea of consciousness and perception and reality, dreams and wakefulness, factual, what actually is going on in the world around us versus what we tell ourselves, and our perceptions of history, and how it's the very same. And how, yeah, the cyclical nature of history, fall and redemption, and yeah, the everyman character. And the language itself, though, it's like as if all this wasn't just so very, very, very richly symbolic and packed to the nines with cultural references. The language itself is meant to allude to that. So it's like it's order of words, it's the language used, and it's how some are jammed together and so forth that makes you realize that there's just hundreds, if not thousands, of references per page, which is why this is so hard to read. You can't possibly start getting into it without feeling like you're missing so much. And Joyce spent, in fact, the dates are right in here. Um, yeah, as I say, he spent many years. As for how many, he wrote this in Paris between 1922 and 1939, the eve of World War II. And yeah, a good 17 years. And so he had said, when asked about the inaccessibility in people reading it, he said, well, it took me 17 years to write. I don't see why people shouldn't spend 17 years reading it. Very few people have that kind of time. Anyway, that was his final and magnum opus. It was his biggest accomplishment, but it was not his only one. Uh, And I broke my promise here. I said I would not be touching on Finnegans Wake, and yet here I am touching on it first. But there's a reason for that. It's really significant, and I wanted to get it out of the way. To move on to his other works, Dubliners and Portraits of the Artist as a Young Man. Stay tuned. I'll be back with that in just a sec.